Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the self-titled collaborative debut from Kanye West and Kid Cudi under the moniker Kids See Ghosts. So I was going to skip this album altogether. Yeah, seriously, I was. And I'm not saying that to shock you or be provocative, because there is no shortage of albums on my schedule right now that I'm a lot more interested in covering than Kanye West's tangled mess of underwhelming contradictions that'll be excused by his diehard fans no matter what he says or does. And when you factor in Kid Cudi and his fan base, well, I haven't actually ever reviewed a Kid Cudi album in full, but I have heard a fair chunk of his discography, and my general impression is a wealth of genre-blending musical ideas and some interesting language around them, but often falling way short in terms of execution, leading to albums that can be really intriguing on the surface, but also extremely frustrating the deeper you dive in. Ambitious, to be sure, but the gulf between his best work and his worst is vast, and while his well-publicized mental state might make some projects explainable, it doesn't exactly make them all that listenable. Gotta be honest there. Now, that being said, Kid Cudi and Kanye West, they managed to find wavelengths where their material has really gelled together before, going back as far as 808s and Heartbreak. And the positive but very critical reception to this album was kind of intriguing, especially as critics have not held back and come to Kid Cudi in the past, both for good or for ill. And when you pair it all with a certain overwhelmingly positive review that I don't think anybody saw coming, it's likely where most of my traffic's coming from. Alright, look, basically for the health of my general operation on YouTube, I had to cover this and put it on my schedule myself. So, alright, how is Kids See Ghost? Well, honestly, it's decent. And believe me, I wish the album inspired more emotions or passion out of me, but while there are some very cool ideas within Kids See Ghost, by the time I got through about 10 listens, the more I was just forced to conclude that it all feels way too scattered and undercooked to really come together for me, both intellectually and emotionally. And while I absolutely understand why some people are so supportive of this project and was able to resonate for them on a fundamental level, for me it just feels, well, kind of underwritten and meandering through its short run of time, simultaneously dragging in spots but feeling oddly underwhelming as a whole. It is a good album, don't get me wrong, but I would be hard-pressed to call this great. And the odd thing is that there are some flashes where this album gets really close to hitting transcendence, and to discuss how and why that happened, we need to start off with Kanye West and Kid Cudi themselves. Now, for a nice change of pace, it's Cudi who is the most grounded and restrained on this project, stepping back within his cushion of auto-tune to keep him on key for once, to provide the foundational hooks and verses for Kanye to catapult off of, at least before Kanye eases back on some of his wildness to fall towards some sort of restrained honesty and well-structured bars where he can try to take stock of what he has left in his wake, and honestly, it's a pretty good look for him. And the guest artists definitely help in this regard. Pusha-T's verse on Feel the Love might not be his best in terms of wordplay or flow, especially compared to Daytona, but it does provide an anchor point before Kanye starts spraying what I can only describe as trap scatting. And while I found Mos Def's bridge on the title track to be kind of underwhelming, he was a solid presence on the hook for most of the song. Now, what caught me off guard was Ty Dolla $ign on Free Ghost Town Part 2, most because his raspy contributions to the choral harmonies were a very welcome contrast to Kanye and Kid Cudi imitating 070 Shake's overblown delivery on the first Ghost Town. You know when they go, free! Yes, I know the contrast is intentional, but you're not going to convince me that that inflection sounds anything close to good and not goofy as all hell. But to be fair here, there are some moments in the production and arrangements that caught me off guard in a really good way. Hell, I would make the argument that of the Kanye West produced projects released thus far this month, this one it probably feels the most eclectic, and it starts off really strong. Say what you will about the trap scatting on Feel the Love, it's got that visceral presence to kick into that sharper march cadence that earns that brief flicker of the guitars and the flutes before the final hook. It actually kind of fits all together really well, and Fire might be even better with the noisy, jangling guitar groove and the jingling percussion, and in a strange way, almost reminds me of an off-kilter Swans groove circa To Be Kind, and I mean that as the highest possible compliment. Couple that with the odd cackles and the hints of flutes and spacey effects, and you've got a pretty damn potent instrumental that I really came back to, which doesn't quite keep the same momentum against the flipped Louis Prima sample on Fourth Dimension, but it does kind of feel reminiscent of Jesus Walks, and that's only a good sign. I like that song. Go a step further to the muted keys and the lo-fi beat on Reborn, and I actually appreciate the extended, dusty mantra of Kid Cudi's weary voice projecting a way forward, even though that path remains very much unclear to him. Even on the title track, I can appreciate the deeper swells of the eerie keys beneath the odd fizzy rumble of the beat, or how Kanye flipped the jangling Nirvana guitar sample on Cudi Montage beneath the gentle swells of synth beneath the hook from Mr. Hudson and Kid Cudi themselves. And you know what? I will freely admit it requires real skill as a producer to include all these tones of different fidelities and create a cohesive sound and tone, as Kanye does here. A texture blur of auto-tune, rattling guitars, fuzzy samples, bassy rumbles, aching synths, and the cracking percussion. Even if by the time we reach the final 3 songs, the momentum starts to drip away a little bit, and the atmosphere starts to show some of its seams. It doesn't quite feel as perfectly cohesive or explosive as it could, but it gets close. Now granted, I think the biggest reason for some of that comes in the content, where again, I'm going to establish right out of the gate, as I did for Ye, that I consider both Kid Cudi and Kanye to be rational actors in control of their artistic decisions. And hell, that's not even just part of my critical framing, it's one of the major thematic undercurrents of this album. A hard-fought battle with internal demons that leaves both men free to confront the much bigger issues that might lie ahead of them once they get out of their own heads. And like with Ye, there is a natural progression on this project. From the bleak, hellish stomping of the earlier songs, the more wistful, ethereal hopes characterized by the later tracks that might not be fully free of some of that melancholic darkness, but it can at least see heaven and hope in the skies ahead. And there are some definite details that I appreciate with all of this. I like how Pusha-T's nihilism and Kanye's rage have to be set aside for the reclamation of the self, scars left behind, and paranoid debauchery either embraced or transcended, with Fourth Dimension filled with multiple callbacks to Yeezus and the systemic enforced downward spiral of that project, characterized by the loaded gifts given by the Santa Claus stand-in on that sample. They may have gotten a lot of wealth out of it, but they also got bipolar disorder and depression, some really dark gifts indeed. But by knowing oneself and embracing those flaws in their own minds, or not even characterizing them as flaws, there's a feeling of exultant release and freedom. And I really do like how on Reborn, both Kid Cudi and Kanye speak as frankly and plainly about their internal struggles as they ever have, with Kanye highlighting the sharp juxtaposition of bipolar disorder with lines like, "What an awesome thing," engulfed in shame. But he's finally comfortable to feel it all and not be dulled by over-reliance on medication. He's found his proper dose. And Kid Cudi cuts even deeper as he sees the choices and responsibility that he has to take to move away from depression. And I like that the next step, it's not clear, a little bit uncertain how he could feel going forward. He doesn't know. And then we've got the final 2 songs where things start to slip a little bit. The title track less so, more a feeling of stability, reorienting on the right track, acknowledging that there were those who are prophesying their downfall but confident in their artistic progression to ascend past that. Although Kanye doesn't exactly help himself by juxtaposing how he doesn't read next to the Bible he keeps in his bedside, which might be more revealing than he intended. But what gets frustrating is the final song, Cudi Montage, most because it's on the cusp of really working. Both men having walked a hard road to stability for themselves internally, only to step into a world overburdened under broken systems, where to them God's salvation might be the only thing to keep them from backsliding if nothing else can really change. It's a note of ambiguity against the rising tide of hope. I appreciate that nuance. And then Kanye, through telling a story of systemic violence, he ends his verse with the line, "Hopefully Alice Johnson will inspire men." And again, I get what Kanye's intending with this. Alice Johnson being the woman who had her sentence of cocaine trafficking commuted by the current president on the request of Kim Kardashian, that her freedom from an unjust drug war could inspire men to change the system. But there are 2 big problems with this. The first is intrinsic to the album themselves. The album pushes a very strong individualistic narrative of internal growth and spiritual reconciliation. So to place now faith in systems to provide hope and change doesn't really fit with that narrative all that well. But the larger issue is that, well, the current political administration's got no interest in ending the drug war or the prison industrial complex by any of their actions. And this commutation feels less like a policy change and more like a president infatuated with reality show fame giving favor to another famous person that he can continue to use and exploit Kanye's popularity in the black community. And that real world subtext, which is brought up by Kanye referencing it, it can't help but really color a message of higher hope that probably won't ring out to as many others behind bars right now. Not sure that savior's coming, no matter how much Kanye might want him to. But look, I really want to like this album. Hell, I do like this album a decent bit. It's at least a step above Ye in terms of coherent messaging and its tone, even if it starts to really break apart in the back half and lose some momentum. Production's really solid, there's a solid core in terms of thematic progression, and Kanye and Kid Cudi, they deliver good performances. For the most part, I'm still not a fan of Free! But by the back half, even if it's intentional, it starts to feel kind of scattered and less cohesive than it should, and ultimately it just feels like less than some of its parts. At least for me. As such, I'm giving it an extremely strong 6 out of 10 and a recommendation. Not perfect or amazing, but you know what? If Kanye wanted to wrench things back on track after Ye felt like a misshapen mess, this is a step in the right direction. I can say that, so I don't know. Go check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I'm a little surprised where I fall on this. I'm a little surprised that certain other critics have been so positive on it, because I'm just not. But hey, there's a comment section. You all know what to do down there. You want to buy the record? Links in the description below. I got the poll up there for all you guys who tell me that this is a perfect 10 out of 10 to prove me how wrong I am there. So have fun. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process or help support this channel, so I could have covered this earlier, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. More details right over there. You want to see my schedule, it's on my Instagram, link below. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.